They are saying Bronson Reed might not compete again. Read that again. Let it sink all the way in. One of the most physically imposing, most devastatingly powerful human beings to ever lace up a pair of boots in a WWE ring. A man who has absorbed punishment that would hospitalize ordinary athletes without flinching, is lying in critical condition right now because of what Bron Breakker did to him. Not what happened in a match. Not what unfolded inside the ropes where the rules of competition at least provide some framework of boundaries. No. What Bron Breakker unleashed on Bronson Reed transcended competition entirely. It crossed every line that separates a fierce rivalry from something genuinely frightening. It was not a beating, it was a demolition. It was not a statement, it was an execution attempt. And the fact that we are sitting here using the words, critical condition, in the same sentence as a professional wrestler's name should shake every single person watching this video to their absolute core. This is not sports entertainment anymore. This is something darker. Something more visceral. Something that demands every wrestling fan stop scrolling, stop everything, and reckon with what they just witnessed. Comment right now and tell me, has Bron Breakker gone too far? Because I need to know where this audience stands on what happened. And share this video this instant, because the wrestling world is divided right down the middle on this and your people need to hear this breakdown before they form their opinion. Do not let them process this moment without Ring Rumble 1 in their ear. Before we unpack every brutal, devastating detail of what transpired, if you are new to this channel, you have arrived at the most electrifying, most passionate, most unfiltered wrestling analysis platform on all of YouTube. This is Ring Rumble 1, where we never shy away from the uncomfortable truths, never water down the conversation, and never treat professional wrestling as anything less than the emotionally complex, athletically magnificent spectacle it truly is. Subscribe right now and hammer that notification bell into oblivion so you never miss a single upload. We are on this story relentlessly and you cannot afford to miss a single chapter of what is unfolding. Subscribe. Bell. Locked in. Now let's get into every shattering detail. Let us begin with Bronson Reed, because this man deserves to have his legacy and his physical stature properly acknowledged before we discuss what was done to him, because understanding who Bronson Reed is makes what happened to him exponentially more horrifying. Bronson Reed is not a man who inspires sympathy under ordinary circumstances. He is 6 feet 2 inches of concentrated, barely contained destruction. He weighs in at over 330 pounds of genuine, functional mass, not decorative size, not the kind of bulk that looks impressive standing still but evaporates under athletic pressure. Bronson Reed moves with a fluidity and ferocity that defies every physical expectation his frame suggests. His tsunami splash, that moment when 330 pounds of accelerating human launches itself from the top rope and crashes down onto a prone opponent, is one of the most terrifying offensive maneuvers in WWE today. This is not a fragile man. This is not someone who wilts under pressure or crumbles beneath punishment. Bronson Reed was built, both genetically and through years of relentless physical conditioning, to absorb devastation and return it with compounded interest. And Bron Breakker put him in critical condition. Let that magnitude wash over you completely. For Bron Breakker to have inflicted injuries severe enough to render Bronson Reed, critically compromised, the level of violence that was deployed had to be something categorically beyond anything we normally witness even in the most intense, most physically brutal WWE confrontations. To Bronson Reed. An assault so disproportionate, so unrelenting, so devoid of the restraint that even the most savage competitors typically maintain, that it has forced WWE officials, medical personnel, and the entire roster to confront an uncomfortable question. Is Bron Breakker still in control of himself? Because here is what genuinely unsettles me about this situation, and I want you to sit with this thought, really let it permeate. When a competitor loses control in a moment of heated passion, when adrenaline and emotion collide and things escalate beyond original intent, that is understandable. Ugly, but understandable. Human, even. But everything about the way Bron Breakker attacked Bronson Reed suggested the complete opposite of a loss of control. It suggested absolute, terrifying control. Every strike was deliberate. Every movement was purposeful. There was no frenzy, no wild, uncoordinated explosion of unbridled rage. What witnesses described was a calculated, almost eerily composed Bron Breakker dismantling Bronson Reed with the systematic precision of someone following an internal blueprint for maximum damage. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly how far he was taking it. And he chose, with full cognitive awareness, to keep going anyway. That is not a man who lost his temper. That is a man who made a choice. And that distinction matters profoundly, because it means this was not an accident. It was not an escalation that spiraled beyond his intentions. Bron Breakker looked at Bronson Reed and decided that critical condition was the appropriate destination for this confrontation. He decided that sending a message required leaving a man incapacitated on a level that transcended the normal aftermath of even the most ferocious WWE encounters. The question the entire roster, every WWE official, and every single fan watching needs to urgently answer is this: what message was Bron Breakker actually sending, and who was the true intended recipient? Because here is where this story fractures into genuinely terrifying territory. Bronson Reed is a mammoth. He is one of the most physically formidable specimens on the entire roster. If Bron Breakker chose Bronson Reed as the vehicle for his message, if he specifically selected the biggest, most physically intimidating target available to demonstrate his capabilities, then that message was never really about Bronson Reed at all. That message was addressed to everyone else. Think about the psychology operating beneath the surface of this attack. By incapacitating someone of Bronson Reed's physical caliber, Bron Breakker has effectively communicated to every superstar in that locker room that size offers no sanctuary. That power provides no protection. That if the biggest, most devastating athletes in WWE cannot withstand what Bron is capable of deploying, then what hope does anyone else realistically possess? This is dominance established not through championship victories or marquee match performances, but through something far more primal and far more psychologically penetrating. This is dominance established through fear, respect that is indistinguishable from fear. The deference that comes not from admiration but from the cold, rational calculation that conflict with this particular individual carries consequences too severe to justify. The kind of respect that manifests as averted eyes in hallways and carefully chosen words in interactions and the quiet, unanimous agreement among your peers that this person operates outside the boundaries that govern everyone else. Bron Breakker just purchased that second kind of respect from every person in that locker room. And he purchased it with Bronson Reed's critical condition as the currency. Now I want to address something that has been circulating in the wrestling community since this attack occurred, the argument that Bronson Reed somehow provoked this. That whatever history exists between these two men justifies, or at least contextualizes, the severity of what Bron delivered. I reject that argument completely and without reservation. There is no provocation in professional wrestling that justifies critical condition. There is no prior incident, no history of antagonism, no accumulation of grievances that morally licenses one human being to leave another in the state Bronson Reed currently occupies. The moment you cross from competition into attempting to genuinely, severely, permanently injure your opponent, you have exited the realm of wrestling and entered something that demands a fundamentally different conversation. And WWE cannot allow this to pass without consequence. If Bron Breakker faces no meaningful repercussion for what he did to Bronson Reed, then the implicit message to every superstar on that roster is equally chilling: there are no real limits. There are no actual boundaries. And the only protection you have is your own physical capability to defend yourself. That is a precedent too dangerous to allow. Which brings us to the most combustible element of this entire situation, Bronson Reed's inevitable recovery and return. Because make absolutely no mistake about something. Bronson Reed will return. The man is built from a material that does not break permanently. The injuries will heal. The body will reconstruct. And when Bronson Reed walks back through those curtains, when he stands in that ring again for the first time after what Bron Breakker did to him, the fury that will have been accumulating during every single day of that recovery process will have transformed him into something unrecognizable. You do not put Bronson Reed in critical condition and walk away from the consequences of that decision. You do not leave that kind of scar on that kind of man and expect the ledger to remain unbalanced forever. Bron Breakker may have delivered the most devastating attack of his career. But in doing so, he may have also created the most dangerous enemy of his career. And when those two forces collide again, And they absolutely will. The entire wrestling world will need to brace itself for the shockwave. I need your voices in the comments right now. Has Bron Breakker crossed a line he cannot return from? Is this calculated dominance or something more unhinged? And what happens when Bronson Reed comes back? Share this video everywhere. This is the most significant story in WWE right now, and Ring Rumble 1 is not letting it go. We don't just watch this sport. We live it. Ring Rumble 1. See you in the next one.